I focus on mid-sized companies.
Okay.
The larger Fortune 200, 250 companies,
Yeah.
they retain consultants and interim people that are far more expensive, have their own Rolodex, and it's a different operating environment for me. And to me, I've had some play at that level, and I just found it too constraining and not very rewarding. So
Yeah.
I focus my attention on mid-sized companies, those that have a few hundred employees. The revenues are maybe 25 million or less. They want to grow, they want to achieve, they want to take some risks.
Hey guys, and welcome to the Grow IT podcast. One of your hosts here, Trey King. And today we are very excited to have our guest, Mr. Hampton from the HCB Group. And
Great to be
today
here.
we'll be diving into his story a bit today, what it is his company does, and then as always, some engaging insights into the technology industry. So make sure to stick around for this one.
I
But
like it.
without further ado, Hampton, welcome to the Grow IT podcast. Thanks for coming on.
It still amazes me
Yeah,
that in this day and age, you could get on a video call
yeah,
between 35, 40 minutes west of Washington, D.C., and be connected in real time with someone in South Africa. I,
yeah.
I'm still amazed at it. I remember when I was growing up, I I grew up about a half a mile from
Yeah,
Disneyland in Southern California. So we would hop the fence, and my friends would go play, and the security people would try to throw us out, and we had a good time. But one of the
yeah,
things that always fascinated me back then was something called the video phone. Whoa, the video phone. You could
yeah,
actually pick up the phone, a phone, and talk to somebody like it's the cartoon from the Jetsons or something. And everybody was sort of ooh and ah, and they really never thought it would happen. And then, well, here we are, and
yeah.
it's amazing.
Excellent. No, I agree. I think maybe to kick things off, Hampton, if you don't mind, just to formally introduce yourself and just tell us a quick snippet or two of your background, of your story.
Well, I'm from Southern California. I grew up there. I took a commission in the Navy. I spent
Okay.
21 plus years in the Navy. A number of ships, went all over the world, had my own command, and then retired. Oh gosh, about 20 years ago now, and went into the private sector. And I
Yeah.
started out with a lot of the defense contractors, which is fairly typical of someone that retires out of the military. But then, when the economy in the world fell apart in 2009 or so, I
Yep.
opened my own consultancy. And I thought, well, I hope I live. I hope I can pay the rent.
Mm.
But I have had a blast. It has been the best thing that could ever happen to me because
Yeah.
it allowed me to just take everything that I thought I knew
Mm.
and exploit it and go in different directions. So I focused on defense and national security topics, and then focused in then into homeland security and defense because that was the reality after 9/11, and then gradually focused more into maritime logistics and energy services. And so what did I do? Well, I took on interim corporate positions like a COO or EVP or something like that. And then I
Yeah.
ended up giving strategic advice because there isn't a market vertical that just sits by itself. I mean, no market is an island. I mean, it just doesn't work that way. It's
Mm.
interconnected with so many other things. And not everybody has the depth and the background to connect all the salient dots. I mean, I'm not,
Good point.
I'm not trying to put myself on a pedestal, but you get along in life and you end up knowing a lot. And,
Yeah. Of
you
course.
might as well share that with people so that they
Mm.
can, I mean, you get paid for it, but you end up giving a public good. There's companies are successful. And the biggest benefit I've had personally is that most of the advice I've given, the results that for which I contribute, my skill sets have served a public good. Something innovative happened. Something was created. The company grew. It did something good. Most of the time, not always, because there are failures along the way. But
Yeah. Yeah.
understanding technology and people and the real world and geography, that's I kind of put it together in a box, and I spend time with companies and help them sort through how to get past the horizon.
Mm, mm. But I mean, that's quite profound, Hampton. Because I mean, there's a lot of people out there that's you know, that their purpose is not necessarily linked up with what they do, for as a business or as an income. And it's so good to hear these stories when I get to talk to, so have a conversation rather with someone that is actually doing what he's passionate about in giving back and doing it part of business.
It's
That's
fun to, well, if I was 30,
yeah,
sometimes I wish I was today. I mean, it'd be a lot easier in a lot of ways, but
yeah,
I wouldn't know as much.
yeah.
And, you have to get to that point.
Mm,
And if you have the energy, the drive, and you have the relationships, you can actually do something that excites you. It's a challenge. And the clients that I represent right now are, com-
yeah,
are completely different from each other. And for some people, that would be very hard to manage. For me, I thrive in that environment, and I really find some overlap. I have to look for it sometimes, but it's there.
yeah.
And I still travel. A couple of weeks ago, I was in Ukraine and Poland. I'll be going to London next week. I'm the
Gee.
editorial director of a magazine for logistics in Panama, and then doing things here in the U.S. I was just in Orlando, Florida yesterday, with working out a client relationship with a company that has a UAV that is focused on nothing but logistics. It lifts cargo
Right.
from one place to another. Nobody
Yeah,
has that in industry. UAVs are always doom and gloom and weapon
yeah,
systems and all that. And this serves
yeah.
a commercial purpose, of which is
Oh no.
sorely needed in the world. But it's completely different than my other clients. And I'm able to bring them together sometimes in rather odd relationships that create some extraordinary portfolio offerings.
Mm,
So
mm, mm.
yeah, you gotta create your own fun sometimes.
Tell me, Hampton, based on your expertise, especially you that's quite the jet setter, right? you
I
you
don't
move
think that's
you
no.
move you move around quite often, right? Obviously where your clients are based, but based on your expertise, what are some of the current trends, that you are like lately, what you're picking up? What ways are the winds blowing these days?
Well, the I focus on mid-sized companies.
Okay.
The larger Fortune 200, 250 companies,
Yeah.
they retain consultants and interim people that are far more expensive, have their own Rolodex, and it's a different operating environment that for me. And to me, I've had some play at that level, and I just found it too constraining and not very rewarding. So
Yeah.
I focus my attention on mid-sized companies, those that have a few hundred employees. The revenues are maybe 25 million or less. They want to grow, they want to achieve, they want to take some risks. So
Mm,
I find that to be exciting. The challenges that of late, maybe for the past 18, 24 months, is that mid-sized companies, and all of these tend to have some international exposure, is they're
yeah.
very concerned about the geopolitical influence on business.
Yes.
Um, Geopolitics is something that businesses typically, really don't think about very much.
Yeah. I just
Because
want to say,
because you can't control it. Everybody has an opinion about what's going on. What's the solution, what's the outcome, and all that. But it's important because, um, today, I mean, we have 8 armed conflicts going on around the world. 8. They didn't exist a few years ago.
at
Well,
any
it
given time.
makes a difference. I mean, there's just so much attention.
Mm,
The G20 governments are focused on it. It affects logistics. It drives inflation. It has an impact on industry agreements. So if you're a
yes.
mid-sized company, it affects where you get your materials, your commodities. It affects the prices associated with trade and freight forward. It affects your access to labor, and
Mm,
it ultimately affects your business strategy. For some companies more than others. But
yeah.
I was just sitting in a hotel lobby in Warsaw, Poland,
Yeah.
and I just sat and listened. And everyone talked about business. Everyone was talking about what's going to go on in the United States, what's going on in this part of the world, what is this company going to do and that company going to do. And it wasn't
Mm.
focused on whether the company was solid. It wasn't had not, it was all about what's going on in the big picture.
Yeah.
And and distilling it, down in a way that mid-sized corporate officers can get their arms around and see the impact on their business and think
Mm.
through a solution. Um, that's where I've spent a significant amount of my time. Um,
So,
you
tell
know,
me, Hampton, if you don't mind, just to, having said that, what would your take be on the current market sentiment?
they're right now,
Yeah.
globally. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
where you are. I mean, and I think it's evident just by looking at the news, is that
Mm.
everybody right now in early December 2024 is in terms of looking at their financial portfolio. What is their exposure?
Yeah.
What does it mean for inflation? What does it mean for the value of currency? Everyone is really waiting until after the inauguration of the next US president,
Mm.
because you have the world's largest economy. It's the third largest country in the world, the third largest population in the world, and
Mm.
extraordinary influence. And it's the currency and the reserve currency of the world. So any upper level movement in the political and the governance structure of the country has an impact. And
Mm.
so today they're taking a pause. They're not making large investments. You can see
Mm.
that in the shareholder meetings of the larger companies in the world. Their shareholder portfolios are expressing pause, waiting. We will see. They try to make some predictions, but who really knows?
Yeah.
So for a mid-sized company, it's a little bit easier because it takes a while for the cascading effects of large decisions to hit them. But they too are taking a pause because mid-sized companies are closer to their employees. They see them every day. They
Good
touch them.
point.
And so if the employees are waiting because they have to make some kitchen table decisions, it has an impact on the vibe, the environment, the culture inside
Mm.
mid-sized companies. And I saw that just last week when I was in some meetings. So I think for now, going into the first quarter of next year, people are waiting. They're holding the cards to their chest. They're not writing big checks, and they're going to make decisions later.
Very interesting. I think this is maybe a good time, Hampton, that
Yeah.
if you don't mind for the listeners, just to elaborate maybe a bit better and a bit more, and just to explain what it is, what your business, what it is that you and your business, what you guys do.
Well, I'm the managing partner of my consultancy. I reach out from time to time to colleagues that are in my network and only in my network. Very rarely do I ever reach out to touch anybody that I don't know personally in terms of their credibility and their knowledge base,
Yeah.
LinkedIn and other media platforms.
Mm.
And
Mm.
it tends to go down two paths. One is to give companies a look and help them structure their strategic vision and their
Yep.
business plans, one, in sequential order. Or the other direction is to perform in some interim capacity at the corporate level. And that could be to get the company well, or to get the company in a position where it can be focused or be the subject of merger and acquisition. Um,
Okay.
but it's always an interim position because people want a problem to be resolved, and
Mm.
sometimes they think they know the problem, but in the end maybe they don't. And sometimes the person that hires me is the problem. So you have to sort of work through that
That's
in a very
interesting.
delicate way. But in terms
That's
of
very
helping companies with their business strategy, it's a little bit more than being an advisor. You really have to really kind of roll up your sleeves a little bit, get into the company, and help them think through what do you think your value proposition is? What's the performance value of your value proposition?
Mm.
And what does that look like in the marketplace? Do you really understand the competitive field? How did you arrive at understanding the competitive field? Um, I was I was in a meeting in Seattle and was with a company, and the one of their vice presidents was uh, demonstrating and briefing to me what their corporate business strategy was. And I
Yeah.
asked questions about, well, what does this mean? And where did you get this information? And where's the source of this? And what's your legal exposure? And he really couldn't answer the question. And he was a bright guy. He was an MIT graduate. He had a PhD in a subject matter. So he was bright. And I thought, why doesn't he answer these questions? Well, we really pulled on AI,
Yeah.
artificial intelligence, to help get us through our strategy. And therein
Mm-hmm.
lies a different issue. Because if you don't own the subject matter, if you don't own the recommendation, if you don't have the education and the knowledge behind what it is that you're presenting to a client, much less your own corporate structure,
Yeah.
then you're not going to be successful. So um, I I help companies kind of think through these challenges with their own team.
With their
And
own team.
most time an outsider is a breath of fresh air sometimes. And you just sort of have to, a little bit of emotional intelligence involved. You have to
Yeah.
understand who's around the table, their personalities, and you kind
Mm.
of you have to roll up your sleeves and be part of it.
Um, uh, Due to you having like a variety set of clientele, are there maybe like things that you pick up from? You mentioned AI now. Obviously, I'm leaning towards the data side of things now. You know, aren't you picking up? Do they have their protocols and policies, procedures in place? Let's say from a like a data protection point of view.
No, no,
Yes. Okay.
not at all. I mean, I if you kind of think back to the 90s,
Yeah.
during the dot-com revolution with the internet coming into play. What was the internet? Well, the internet was a platform really to, um, add efficiency and streamline the exchange of data
Yeah.
going from one place to another. And it grew
Mm.
from there. It gave you the access to data. It'll give you methods and means of doing forensic analysis on data. But in the end, it all distilled into the fundamentals of being the platform that allows you to exchange data.
Mm.
And there
Mm.
wasn't any authority on the internet back then. I mean, it didn't exist before it was created. And if someone thought they were the authority, how are they going to tell anybody? Because the internet was just growing, and you didn't have the ability yet to go out and tell people how smart you were, even though you really didn't have the background for it. Well, it's a little
Yeah. Yeah.
different now with AI, because now you have, with the internet, everyone is able to say they are an authority on artificial intelligence.
Yes.
Like everybody's a cook, everybody's a realtor, everybody fixes homes, everybody's on television, everybody writes a book. So everybody is the authority on AI, and that's just not the case. Um, companies are very sensitive about the proprietary nature of their data, and even now, just the compromise on the internet is something they're still trying to get their arms around. And now you introduce something that they don't understand very
I
well,
don't
like
understand. Yeah.
artificial intelligence. You know,
Yeah.
where does where's the information come from AI? Where does all this come from? What's my legal exposure if I take something from that's AI generated? How companies are really trying to figure that out. And what's the security of artificial intelligence with their proprietary data? And then, you have employees that you hire because they have skill sets. But now they go ahead and punch a button. They ask the computer a question. Your
Yeah.
laptop generates an answer. Well, is it the product of the employee that you pay, who's supposed to be smart, or did they simply rely, like the story I gave you around the business table, is it
Yes.
just generated by artificial intelligence? All of which is somehow exchanged and derived and further developed on the internet. It does
Mm.
get very complicated. Um,
Mm.
and for mid-sized companies that just don't have the elasticity of risk, uh, they're cautious.
Okay, that's very interesting. The If you don't mind, I would like to get
Yeah.
your opinion, Hampton. Lack of a better word, you've been around the block, right? And
Well, I hope I
in
don't
order,
look like that too much.
no, you don't, but you've been. It's colorful,
I
right?
don't have that gray beard yet, so I'm trying.
How cool is it? Um, in your opinion, what type of mindset, right, would you say is needed to, be a successful founder or even leader of a company?
Well, you need a lot more than just to have an MBA. You need a lot more than
Then the hard
graduating
copy.
from college. It's just I think I I fundamentally believe today,
Yeah.
more than perhaps in the past 10 or 15 years, that a man, a guy or gal who has worked during college is important. Did they work in McDonald's? Did they work in a hotel? Did they work in a store? Did they deal with people?
Mm,
Did they exchange? Did they have a did they were they part of business transactions, even at
yeah.
a minor level? So if you're if you're in a clothing store and you're a college student, you're part of that business environment. It's not complicated, but you learn certain skill sets. Do you understand the fundamentals of business and finance? You know, what's interest? What's compounding interest? Do you manage money? Do you it's a lot more, what's behind Apple, using your mobile device to pay for
You
something at the
advise.
store? Do you feel money? Do you know where it comes from? Do you understand those principles? And then you you know what else do you know besides the market vertical of where you have some affinity, or the product that you want to develop? Because you asked me about a person that wants to start a company and so forth.
Yeah.
What do you really know about it beyond just the core elements of your product? What are the influencing factors, and
Yeah.
what are the risks that are involved? So today, the where a young person begins in college and what is their exposure, in my opinion, has tremendous bearing on where they are when they're in their early 30s, when they
Yes.
really start to get into a position that's responsible and accountable. And that's also the age that people might want to start a business. They have the sufficient capital, they have the right relationships. So what
Mm,
is it that's behind them? What's their real world practical experience? Because if all they've done is just kind of surf the web, worked in positions where it's largely involved on the internet, pressing a button, not really rolling up their sleeves, not seeing a
mm,
production line, not pulling weeds in the backyard, not going into a store and
mm.
negotiating the price of vegetables, not just ordering it on Amazon for, Groupon to deliver on a motorcycle. I mean, you have to really have a background more so today, because the the cost of failure today is higher, I think, than it would have been before.
Good points. Very interesting. Yo, and tell me, Hampton, where can the listeners, where can they get, should they want to reach out to you guys, where can they do that?
I'm on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. Yeah.
Everything's on LinkedIn for me. And people have asked me that. They go, "Why don't you have some large website for your consultancy?" I really haven't needed it, because it's the network that reaches out to me, or I reach out to them for some advice. I use my network, relentlessly.
Mm,
And
mm.
I think it's a free platform, and for the volume of activity for myself and my colleagues, it's really more than enough. So
Excellent. Well, Hampton, I need to thank you. What an insightful conversation. You've got, such an interesting take on a couple of points. And the value, especially things that you mentioned from from a fractional point of view, going into companies and either not necessarily wanting to reinvent the wheel, or sometimes it does take that, or like you mentioned, sometimes it happens the person that wants you there is the person that's the problem, which I think opens up a different interesting
it does.
conversation, right? That's a
you know,
boardroom meeting that's not always fun.
well,
um
it's a tough lunch. You go out to lunch with someone
lunch.
and you say, you
Yeah.
know, Janet or Bill, I just have to be honest with you. You're the problem.
Yeah.
And the assumption is that everybody is trying their best. Everybody really wants to produce the optimum product. They all think they're really the best guy in the room. Not from a
mm.
egotistical perspective, but they've earned the right to be in the room. Their colleagues support them, and they're really doing a good job. And for someone from the outside to sit down with them in a very tender but business way and
Yeah,
share with them that there's a high probability, most assuredly, that they are the problem. But I have to, where it is possible to also say, you are the solution.
mm.
You can be the solution. That's a win. Sometimes they can't be part of the solution.
Yeah,
And you have to offer them some exit. You have to suggest maybe a way for them to move in a different direction,
mm,
still have professional standing and personal branding and all that. But because
yeah,
again, it's the people are people, and very rarely do you run into somebody that just isn't good. They're out
mm.
there, but you know, uh, how you treat people always comes back to you in some fashion or form. I mean, it's a big world out there, but it's pretty small with the internet. And but you're right. Sometimes it gets pretty sporty with who
Oh,
you talk to.
Hampton, thank you for coming
Yeah.
on, for taking the time to do so. And thank you for the value you brought to the table as well today. I can fully understand why you are so successful. I wish you and your clients, businesses all of the best. And thanks for hopping on. Appreciate it.
No, I appreciate the invitation. I look forward to speaking again sometime. Anytime.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Take
All
care.
right.